They had everything: fame, fortune, and adoring fans. But behind the scenes, these Hollywood legends faced something far more tragic. In this final chapter of our series, we uncover the heartbreaking downfall of 19 stars who died broke, forgotten, and far from the glamorous lives they once knew. Edie Sedgwick. Edie Sedgwick had it all: wealth, beauty, and instant fame. Born into a privileged family, she entered the spotlight as Andy Warhol's most iconic muse, dazzling audiences in his underground films. But the glitz masked something darker. Sedgwick fell deep into the chaos of the 1960s art scene, relying heavily on drugs to cope with her mental health struggles. Her inheritance vanished quickly, lavished on luxury, substances, and a lifestyle she couldn't maintain. As her relationship with Warhol soured, so did her opportunities. The fame that once surrounded her faded fast, leaving Edie isolated, addicted, and broke. By 1971, at just 28 years old, she passed away from an overdose. She left behind no assets, no fortune, just the haunting legacy of a woman consumed by the world that made her famous. Jackie Coogan. Jackie Coogan became a household name before he was even old enough to drive. Starring alongside Charlie Chaplin in The Kid, he was one of the first true child stars, and one of the first to be financially destroyed by his own family. Coogan earned millions during his early fame, but his mother and stepfather spent nearly all of it on lavish homes, cars, and luxury. When he turned 21, he discovered he had virtually nothing left. His lawsuit to reclaim a fraction of his earnings led to the creation of the Coogan Law, meant to protect future child actors. But for Jackie, the damage was already done. Though he later found modest success as Uncle Fester on The Addams Family, he spent most of his life working just to stay afloat. Barbara Lamar. They called her the Too Beautiful Girl, and for a brief moment in the silent film era, Barbara Lamar was everywhere. She starred in hits like The Three Musketeers and The Prisoner of Zenda, captivating audiences with her striking looks and magnetic presence. But behind the glamour, her life moved at a reckless speed. Lamar famously claimed she only needed 2 hours of sleep a night, fueled by alcohol, drugs, and endless parties. Her body began to deteriorate quickly, and so did her finances. She spent money as fast as she earned it, with no plan for the future. By her late 20s, she was battling addiction, exhaustion, and severe health problems. When she died in 1926 at just 29 years old, she was nearly penniless, her final medical bills covered by friends. David Carradine. David Carradine was born into a legendary acting family and became a star in his own right with the hit series Kung Fu. Later, his role in Kill Bill revived his image for a new generation. But behind the fame, Carradine's life was messy, unpredictable, and financially unstable. Multiple divorces, legal battles, and struggles with substance abuse drained his wealth over the years. Despite a long career in film and television, Carradine often took low-budget roles just to stay afloat. His erratic behavior and eccentric lifestyle made him difficult to cast in major projects. When he passed away in 2009 under shocking and mysterious circumstances, he left behind more questions than assets. Deeply in debt, Carradine's final years were a far cry from the success his early fame once promised. Linda Darnell. Once celebrated for her stunning beauty and roles in classics like Forever Amber, Linda Darnell was one of Hollywood's brightest stars in the 1940s. But when her contract with 20th Century Fox ended, her career collapsed almost overnight. Struggling to find meaningful work, Darnell battled alcoholism and endured a series of abusive relationships that left her emotionally and financially drained. Desperate to make ends meet, she took nightclub gigs, toured with small theater troupes, and accepted supporting roles on television. Anything to keep the lights on. Her fall from fame was brutal and public. In 1965, she tragically died in a house fire at just 41 years old. By then, she was nearly broke, relying on friends for support and far removed from the glamorous life she once led. Bela Lugosi. Bela Lugosi became immortal as Count Dracula, but in real life, he couldn't escape the horror of being typecast. After his breakout role, Lugosi found himself trapped in eerie, one-dimensional characters that gradually fell out of favor with audiences. As offers dried up, so did his income. Struggling with chronic pain, he became addicted to morphine, a dependency that shattered both his finances and his reputation. Studios stopped calling, and Lugosi's elegant screen presence gave way to poverty and desperation. In his final years, he was living in humble conditions and reportedly had to ask fans for money just to survive. When he died in 1956, his net worth was estimated at less than $1,000. Dracula made him a legend, but it couldn't protect him from a very real and tragic downfall. Jean Seberg. Jean Seberg rose to fame with her role in Breathless and quickly became a darling of both Hollywood and European cinema. But her outspoken political activism, especially her support for civil rights, put her in the FBI's crosshairs. What followed was a devastating smear campaign that wrecked her image and stalled her career. The constant surveillance and public attacks triggered a severe decline in her mental health. Seberg was plagued by depression and isolated from the industry that once embraced her. Legal costs, healthcare expenses, and dwindling work opportunities drained her finances. By the time she died in 1979, found in her car days after going missing, she was deeply in debt and completely alone. Her story is a chilling reminder that in Hollywood, fame can disappear faster than it arrives. Ed Wood. Ed Wood dreamed of being the next big thing in Hollywood. Instead, he became infamous for directing what many called the worst films ever made, like Plan 9 from Outer Space. While his work eventually gained cult status, during his lifetime, Wood was mocked, broke, and barely hanging on. He struggled constantly to fund his projects, often relying on friends, favors, and shoestring budgets. As the doors of Hollywood closed, he turned to pulp novels and even adult films just to survive. Alcoholism crept in, worsening his instability. In his final years, he was evicted, jobless, and living in near poverty with his wife. When he died in 1978, he had only a few dollars to his name. Ed Wood left behind a strange legacy, famous in death, forgotten in life. Gail Russell. Gail Russell had the beauty and talent to become a major Hollywood star, and for a time, she was. Known for haunting performances in films like The Uninvited, she captivated audiences, but behind the camera, she was consumed by anxiety. Painfully shy and plagued by stage fright, she turned to alcohol to calm her nerves. What began as a coping mechanism soon became an addiction. Russell's drinking led to car accidents, arrests, and erratic behavior that destroyed her reputation. As offers disappeared, so did her financial security. By the late 1950s, she was nearly blacklisted and forced to accept sporadic television work. Living alone in a modest apartment, she died in 1961 at just 36 years old. Her bank account was nearly empty, and her once bright career had faded into silence. Farrah Fawcett. Farrah Fawcett was the face of the 1970s, an international sensation thanks to Charlie's Angels and that iconic red swimsuit poster. She commanded huge salaries, graced magazine covers, and lived the Hollywood dream. But when she was diagnosed with cancer in the 2000s, everything changed. Determined to fight, she sought experimental treatments and even traveled abroad for care, racking up enormous medical expenses. As her health declined, she was unable to work, and her savings began to dwindle. Though she remained in the public eye during her illness, the financial toll of years of treatments became overwhelming. When she passed away in 2009, her once impressive fortune had significantly diminished. Her story is a powerful reminder that no amount of fame can shield someone from the crushing weight of illness or the cost of survival. Peter Lawford. Peter Lawford had it all: good looks, charm, and connections that ran straight to the Kennedy family. As a member of the Rat Pack, he starred in films like Ocean's 11 and partied with legends. But behind the glamour, Lawford was quietly unraveling. His career stalled in the 1970s, and the roles dried up. Meanwhile, his personal life was in constant turmoil, marked by multiple divorces, substance abuse, and reckless spending. Business ventures failed, and his once steady income disappeared. By the time he passed away in 1984, his net worth was a fraction of what it once was. Some reports suggest he died with little more than a few $100,000, far from his former wealth. Lawford's decline shows how even Hollywood royalty can fall when the spotlight goes dark. Marie Dressler. Marie Dressler wasn't just a star, she was one of MGM's highest-paid actresses during the Great Depression. Known for her sharp wit and lovable presence in hits like Min and Bill and Dinner at 8, she became a symbol of resilience in hard times. But off-screen, her generosity knew no bounds. She gave freely to struggling friends and charities, never thinking to safeguard her own future. With little financial planning and mounting health issues, Dressler found herself in trouble as her cancer worsened. Medical expenses piled up, and she was no longer able to work. Despite her box office power, she died in 1934 with far less than expected. Her fame was massive, but her fortune had quietly vanished, leaving behind a legacy of kindness, not riches. Darla Hood. Darla Hood charmed the world as the sweet, spunky face of our gang, better known as the Little Rascals. She was a childhood star beloved by millions, but the fame didn't last. As she grew older, roles dried up, and she struggled to recapture the magic of her early success. Though she found occasional work as a voice actor and singer, it was never enough to maintain financial stability. Her adult years were filled with quiet hustle, modest gigs, and health complications. In 1979, she underwent an appendectomy, but died unexpectedly from complications at just 47. At the time of her passing, her financial situation was described as modest. Like many child stars before and after her, Darla Hood learned the hard way that early fame rarely guarantees lasting security. Sean Flynn. Sean Flynn, the son of swashbuckling legend Errol Flynn, could have followed his father's path to fame. Instead, he chose danger over red carpets, trading acting for photojournalism in one of the most volatile eras in history. He embedded himself in the front lines of the Vietnam War, capturing brutal imagery and risking his life for the truth. But passion didn't pay. The work was dangerous and barely lucrative, and Flynn had little in terms of assets. In 1970, while reporting in Cambodia, he vanished, believed to have been captured or killed. His body was never found. Though born into privilege and fame, Sean Flynn died with little to his name. His story stands as a haunting reminder that purpose doesn't always come with a paycheck, and fame can't protect you from everything. Peg Entwistle. Peg Entwistle came to Hollywood with Broadway credentials and big dreams. She landed a small role in 13 Women, but when the film was delayed and her part cut down, her dreams began to crumble. Struggling to find work, burdened by personal disappointment, and facing mounting financial stress, Peg became increasingly despondent. In 1932, at just 24 years old, she climbed the H of the Hollywood sign and jumped to her death. At the time, she had no savings, no assets, and few supporters in the city she hoped would make her a star. Peg's tragic end became one of Hollywood's darkest symbols, how quickly hope can vanish under the weight of rejection. Her name is now legend, but in her final moments, she was utterly alone and broke. Lou Costello. Lou Costello was one half of Abbott and Costello, one of the most beloved comedy duos in Hollywood history. At their peak, they were earning millions, headlining hit films, and dominating radio. But Costello's personal life was full of heartbreak and financial turmoil. After the tragic drowning of his infant son in 1943, he was never the same. He threw himself into work, but legal troubles, failed investments, and IRS issues began eating away at his wealth. His lavish lifestyle only made things worse. By the time he died in 1959 at the age of 52, Costello's fortune had shrunk dramatically, reportedly down to around $500,000, a fraction of what he once had. Despite bringing joy to millions, his final years were shadowed by debt, grief, and a hard financial reality. David Janssen. David Janssen was one of television's most recognizable faces, thanks to his lead role in The Fugitive. His intense work ethic and on-screen charisma made him a household name. But behind the scenes, Jansen's life was chaotic. Multiple marriages, heavy drinking, and a relentless work schedule drained his energy and his bank account. Though he earned well, he spent heavily on alimony, legal fees, and a high-maintenance lifestyle that caught up with him quickly. As his health declined in his 40s, so did his income. When he died suddenly from a heart attack in 1980 at just 48 years old, reports suggested his finances were modest at best. Despite years at the top of the industry, Jansen's story proves that even steady fame can't always guarantee lasting fortune. Lana Turner. Lana Turner was the embodiment of old Hollywood glamour. With hits like The Postman Always Rings Twice and Peyton Place, she lived in the spotlight for decades. But behind the glittering image was a life marked by chaos. Turner was married 8 times, and each divorce came with costly settlements. She was also known for her extravagant spending. Mansions, jewelry, clothes, nothing was off limits. As film roles became scarce and her health declined, she tried to downsize, but the damage was already done. By the time she passed away in 1995 at age 74, much of her fortune had evaporated. Despite her legendary status, she died with a fraction of her wealth intact. Turner's story is a cautionary tale of how luxury without limits can quietly lead to financial collapse. Gloria Graham. Gloria Graham won an Academy Award and lit up the screen in classics like The Big Heat and The Bad and the Beautiful. But as Hollywood shifted, scandals and personal struggles derailed her career. Multiple divorces, erratic behavior, and rumors took a toll on her reputation. By the time she was diagnosed with breast cancer, she was already financially strained. Unable to afford proper treatment and fearful of surgery, she refused conventional care. Desperate for work, she returned to small theater productions in England, still performing, even as her health failed. Graham passed away in 1981 at just 57, with little to show for a career that once promised everything. Her final days were spent far from the spotlight, battling illness and poverty with the quiet resilience of a forgotten legend. Fame is fleeting. And for these 19 Hollywood legends, it disappeared far faster than anyone expected. They once stood at the top of the world, beloved by millions, adored by studios, and showered with wealth. But time, tragedy, addiction, betrayal, and bad luck slowly chipped away at everything they had. For some, it was reckless spending or trusting the wrong people. For others, it was illness, addiction, or a cruel industry that turned its back when they needed it most. What's most haunting isn't just that they died broke, it's that so many were forgotten while still alive. The same spotlight that once lit up their faces eventually burned them out and moved on. Their stories are more than cautionary tales. They reveal the brutal reality behind the golden curtain, a world where fame comes with no guarantees, and fortune can vanish in a heartbeat. These stars may have died with empty bank accounts, but their legacies still echo through time. Because even if Hollywood left them behind, we won't. If you found this video eye-opening, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more untold stories from the Golden Age. We'll be back soon with even more hidden Hollywood history.